We begin with breaking news. The Border 2 fire on Otay Mountain has nearly doubled in size overnight. It is now at 1,000 acres, and there are evacuation orders to tell you about. Thanks for being here at 6 a.m. I'm Eric Connert.
And I'm Neda Iranpour. We know this is a nerve-wracking sight to see. We want to show you the map to let you know where those evacuation orders are in place. So you see in the red right there, that would be mostly a rural area, but we do want to point out the yellow, that would be under an evacuation warning. That includes homes and the Elite Athlete Training Center. The area in blue, they would be under an evacuation advisory, which includes Olympian High School and the Otay Ranch Town Center.
CBS 8's Regina Yarita near the scene of the fire. Regina, how's it look at this hour?
Yeah, good morning, Eric and Neda. And just for reference, we're off of West Day Road. Otay Lakes is just right behind me. This area is closed off to the public, but I'm going to step out of the way, have my photog zoom in, because this is the shocking image that you can even see while driving up here. If you're on the freeway, we saw it as well, that just orange glow and those large flames. That's where firefighters are battling this fire, right on that mountain, right? Just in the middle of that wilderness, which is, well, like we know, dry vegetation because of the lack of rain that we've had these past couple of months, but just a really shocking image. We know that there are areas that are blocked off, as I said. So right now, CAL FIRE actually mentioned that westbound and eastbound State Route 94 at Otay Lakes Road is closed due to this fire. And I do want to show you better video of this and what we're looking at. Just by how large it's spread, you can tell that this is a wind-driven fire. Right now it's burning at 1,000 acres and it is 0% contained. Yesterday, crews were doing water drops and dropping fire retardant to control those flames. We know that this morning they brought in 2 copters to continue those water drops, but obviously lack of visibility is a challenge for them at this time. There's also been smoke from the Border 2 fire blowing west and southwest in the direction of Otay Mesa. Right now, there are evacuation orders and warnings, and I want to pull up the map for you again so you can see which areas they include. So you can see Lower Otay Reservoir, the John Nicholas Field, Otay Lakes Road, Campo Road, and Otay Mountain Truck Trails. The resort and campground are also under evacuation. We also have a full screen of the evacuation points. You can see the address. This is the Edwards Theater on Hamachaw Road in El Cajon. So if you received a notification asking you to evacuate, CAL FIRE strongly advises that you grab your emergency to-go bag and head to the evacuation point. We were able to talk to CAL FIRE yesterday, who described what they're up against currently and what they're still dealing with.
This is in the Otay Mountain Wilderness, so it's limited access for us. There's one road in and out to the fire right now.
And guys, just a scary image to see. I mean, it's really shocking, those large flames, right? I know that yesterday we were dealing with high winds. We're still under that red flag warning. But as Neda will mention in just a couple of minutes, those winds are supposed to subside, which is something necessary that firefighters are hoping for, because those winds, when they shift in just a couple of hours, that will help them continue to battle this fire. But we'll keep you guys updated with more information. We know that there is a smoke advisory still in this area because of those smoky conditions. So if you are dealing with upper respiratory issues, they advise you that you wear a mask if you are heading outside.
Our next story is about an iceberg that is visible from space. The world's biggest iceberg. It is about 1 trillion tons of ice. It is as big as the state of Kerala in India, or twice the size of Greater London in the UK, and it is making a beeline for British land. The giant iceberg is sprinting forward, ready to slam into a remote British island off Antarctica. And this is raising concerns among scientists. But why is this happening, and is it a sign of things to come? Here's a report.
Have you ever taken a crash course? No matter what it was, it wouldn't even come close to the crash course this iceberg is taking. Because this is A23A, the queen of icebergs, the largest iceberg on Earth and one of the world's oldest. It's about 4,000 square kilometers big. If you're in India, that's the size of Kerala. And if you're in the United States, it's as big as Rhode Island. And it's so huge that it's visible from space. But fanfare aside, this iceberg has just delivered some distressing news. It's on a collision course. Think a giant Game of Thrones-like wall lumbering towards an island, because that's exactly what it looks like. This trillion-ton slab of ice is sprinting towards South Georgia, a remote island off Antarctica. It's a British territory and a wildlife haven. For now, the two are about 280 kilometers away from each other. But the iceberg is moving at such a speed that it could slam into the island any day and smash it into pieces, killing countless penguins, seals and birds. And it's all thanks to us. You see, this colossus was carved from Antarctica's Filchner ice shelf in 1986. After it broke, it got stuck in the seafloor. It remained there for about 30 years. Finally, in 2020, it broke free and started speeding into oblivion. Since then, it has continued its journey north. By 2023, it had already made rapid progress. In 2024, it got stuck in an ocean trap and started spinning. This went on for 8 months. And now finally, the iceberg is free again and ready for chaos. While the iceberg has covered more than 3,000 kilometers within this span of time, it has melted, broken off and sped up because of human-caused climate change. As oceans are warming, temperatures are soaring and Antarctica is becoming more unstable. More giant ice sheets are breaking away and posing a threat.
It's very much like the wildfire story that you hear. So wildfires are completely natural things that happen, but the frequency with which they happen has increased dramatically due to climate change. And the same can be said of icebergs and just ice loss for the Antarctic continent.
So the world's biggest iceberg is cruising uncontrollably. What's happening now is just as scary as it is spectacular, and it's yet another proof of how humanity is on thin ice.
All right, we move on. Ireland and Scotland were on high alert for a violent storm that is set to hit them on Friday, with schools ordered to close and trains cancelled. Forecasters are warning that wind speeds can top 130 kilometers an hour when Storm Eowyn hits from the Atlantic, with lashing rain and snow in places. The chair of Ireland's National Emergency Coordination Group has said that it is going to be a damaging, dangerous and destructive weather event. He warned of power outages and told people to stay indoors. Now, Britain was placed on general alert, with UK-governed Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland under the top-level red warning. A government spokesperson has said that 4.5 million people are at risk and are in risk areas and would receive telephone alerts. Ireland's Meteorological Office has also issued a red alert for Republic. Now, public transport will not be operating during the red alerts. Authorities in Scotland and Northern Ireland said that trains and buses will be halted and schools closed. The Britain's Environment Agency has warned of flooding in southern and central England over the coming days. While scientists say that climate change has been caused by humans burning fossil fuels is making storms more severe, supercharged by warmer oceans.
Hundreds of thousands of homes in UK are without power, and 1 in 5 flights have been cancelled as Storm Eowyn batters the country. A red weather warning is in force in parts of Scotland, with millions of people urged to stay at home as wind gusts of 100 kilometers per hour were recorded. Storm Eowyn battered Scotland with unreal high winds, forcing many to stay indoors. Weather warnings were in place for southwestern and central areas of the country. The UK Met Office warned people to expect flying debris, damage to buildings with roofs blown off, and the closure of roads and bridges.
It's very apocalyptic up there. There's not like one person. All this, the barriers are down and bins everywhere.
There was a broken bench.
A broken bench.
Large waves crashed at the Treasure Bay in Wales. The streets of Scotland's capital city were deserted. Dozens of flights from airports at Edinburgh and Glasgow were cancelled. And National Rail advised people living across Scotland and parts of northern England not to travel on Friday. High winds from the storm caused destruction in Northern Ireland as well. 560,000 houses and businesses were left without power. Officials warned the storm is one of the most dangerous they have ever faced and advised residents to stay indoors. More than 110 scheduled departures and 110 arrivals at Dublin Airport were cancelled. All schools in Ireland and Northern Ireland were closed on Friday, and public transport was also shut.
Well, Jen, Monica, police have charged a 21-year-old woman from Washington State. Teresa Youngblood faces 2 weapons charges in connection with Malin's death. Now, the FBI paperwork we obtained says Malin pulled that car over because the owner of the vehicle appeared to have an expired visa. That's Felix Baucolt, a German national. He was also in the car at the time. Youngblood was driving the car, police say, and the affidavit states she got out and opened fire on Malin and other agents without warning. It also said Baucolt tried to draw a gun, but at least one Border Patrol agent fired back. It does not name the agent. All 3 people suffered gunshot wounds. Youngblood was the only one to survive. Now get this, investigators had been surveilling the pair for nearly a week. An employee at a hotel they were staying at called police after allegedly seeing them wearing tactical style clothing and the woman carrying a gun. State police and Homeland Security say they tried to talk to them at the time, but the 2 refused to have a long conversation. They allegedly told police they were in the area looking at property. Investigators say when they searched the car inside, they found tactical gear, a ballistic helmet, night vision goggles, handheld radios, ammunition, and shooting range targets among the items inside. And when the court documents were filed, the 21-year-old was still in the hospital at Dartmouth-Hitchcock Medical Center in New Hampshire. Jen?
Conversations and scrolling just got costlier in Nigeria as the country's government announced a 50% hike on mobile tariffs. This measure was implemented as Nigeria battles one of its worst cost of living crises in decades. The Nigerian Communications Commission said that the hike is approved in response of prevailing market conditions. Tariffs have remained the same in Africa's 4th largest economy since 2013. The increase will heap more pressure on Nigerians already grappling with inflation that sits at a near 30-year high of 34.8%. The tariff hike will directly impact Nigeria's 36.75 million social media users. In 2024, Nigerians ranked among the world's top social media users, with 5th global rank in average daily time spent online. Telecommunication companies in the West African country had initially proposed a 100% tariff increase in the face of risking operational costs.
You know what else isn't a popular idea? Bird flu. Bird flu. Today in Long Island, New York, a duck farm that has been in operation since 1908 shut down. They had to shut down to start the process of euthanizing their entire flock of 100,000 ducks. Because at that farm in Long Island, New York, they've got a confirmed outbreak of bird flu. And bird flu has now killed more than 130 million birds in the United States, in all 50 states. In 28 states, they're now testing their dairy cows for it as well, because it has jumped from birds to cows, which means one of the risk factors they're now alerting people to for this thing is consumption of or contact with raw milk. It's a risk factor now for bird flu. Nearly 70 people in the United States have been infected with bird flu thus far. We've even had deaths of people's pet cats because the cats have drunk raw milk meant for human consumption. The raw milk was from cows infected with bird flu. It gave the cats bird flu, and then the cats died. Because of all that very bad and now very fast-moving news about this new epidemic, the CDC just sent urgent guidance to American hospitals, advising hospitals that when people appear at the hospital with flu this flu season, people shouldn't just be tested for normal flu. They need to be tested for bird flu as well, because that needs to be handled differently. And anybody who tests positive for bird flu needs to be separated from other patients. Hospital staff need to know about it in order to wear appropriate protective clothing to protect themselves. I say the CDC just sent that urgent advice to American hospitals, but when I say they just sent it, what I mean specifically is they sent that advice last week while President Biden was still president. Because now that President Trump is president, he has ordered that the CDC and all U.S. health agencies should no longer release any information to anyone on anything. Not just to the public, but to scientists and doctors and hospitals. And that includes the CDC's flagship health alert publication for doctors and scientists called MMWR, Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report. This week, CDC was scheduled to publish several MMWR reports, including 3 about this burgeoning bird flu outbreak that is happening and rapidly progressing right now. Those alerts, those MMWRs, are not going out. They were as of last week, and what was going out as of last week was alarming. As of this week, with Trump in charge, no. He has ordered that all information be stopped, including scientific information to advise hospitals on how to deal with this emerging epidemic. Is that popular? Is that a good idea? Is that perceived as a popular idea among the American people? Is that what you thought you were voting for? You may have noticed recently at the grocery store, you might have even noticed new headlines recently about the price of eggs really jerking suddenly upward right now. Average egg prices have just shot up to nearly 40% higher than they were this time last year. That's not generic inflation. That's specifically because of bird flu. But all communications and instructions and data and information about trying to contend with bird flu, all of that has been shut down on Trump's orders. So when he says, oh, the last election was all about the price of eggs, I'm pretty sure this isn't what he meant. But that's what we're getting now. Meanwhile, Trump's nominee to run Health and Human Services for the U.S. government reportedly approached one of the nation's largest raw milk producers, asking him to please become an advisor to the FDA in Washington. This is a man whose company has been the subject of at least 11 different lawsuits stemming from contamination of his raw milk products. This farmer has also been the subject of 13 recalls, including for E. coli and Listeria and Campylobacter and Salmonella and, yes, bird flu in his raw milk. His products are currently barred from sale in California for making so many people sick. One salmonella outbreak his company is being sued for resulted in 171 people being sickened, including some people who got kidney failure. Now we are in the midst of the most serious outbreak of bird flu we have ever had as a country, one that is rapidly growing and affects multiple species, including now humans. It is not infecting just birds, but cats and people and cows. This is an epidemic where the CDC is advising hospitals how to deal with people coming in with flu, making sure they're tested for it, telling hospitals how they can protect patients and protect their own health workers. The CDC is warning that raw milk from an infected cow, not only just drinking it, but potentially even just being splashed in the face with it. Yikes. They're saying contact with raw milk from an infected cow is one of the ways people can be exposed to this emerging epidemic of bird flu. And while that is how the last administration was trying to get their arms around this emerging threat as recently as the end of last week, this new administration this week says, first of all, let's get the raw milk people here to Washington to advise the FDA, presumably on all the benefits of raw milk. And in the meantime, stop releasing any information on this bird flu thing, anything. Honestly, it sounds scary. Maybe if we don't talk about it, maybe it'll go away. And by the way, pay no attention to the price of eggs.
Well, we're going to begin with President Donald Trump right now on his way to Southern California as he visits disaster-torn regions of this country. The president is expected to tour areas impacted by those deadly, destructive wildfires that ravaged parts of Los Angeles earlier today. Trump criticized California's response to those fires, calling it a bad situation.
That is a disaster like I don't know if we've ever seen anything like it. It looks like something hit it. And we won't talk about what hit it, but it is a bad, bad situation.
Well, Trump began his multi-state trip in North Carolina this morning, stopping in Asheville, North Carolina, to assess the damage caused by Hurricane Helene last year. There, he slammed FEMA's response to the emergency in North Carolina, threatening to get rid of the agency completely.
I'll also be signing an executive order to begin the process of fundamentally reforming and overhauling FEMA, or maybe getting rid of FEMA. I think, frankly, FEMA is not good. I think when you have a problem like this, I think you want to go and, whether it's a Democrat or Republican governor, you want to use your state to fix it and not waste time calling FEMA and then.
So for more, let's bring in ABC News' Christian Cordero. So first, Christian, today's visits to North Carolina and California mark the president's first trips since returning to the White House. And he's doing what presidents do. He's going out to the disaster zones. But he also slammed FEMA and the Biden administration for its disaster response. What kind of changes is he proposing now that he's back in office?
Well, as we just heard, Terry, right, the fundamental changes, the overhaul, and perhaps getting rid of it entirely is what the president is floating right now. We're not really sure what he means by the fundamental reform to FEMA, but we do know that he can't get rid of the agency entirely, at least not without congressional help. And historically, anyways, lawmakers from both sides of the aisle have supported FEMA. In fact, a lion's share, the majority of the billions of dollars in FEMA's disaster relief fund ends up going to hurricane-prone states like Louisiana, Texas, and Florida, for example. So it is a little bit trickier than just what the president threw out there, and it will be really interesting to see what else he means by those fundamental reforms. Trump also says that he wants the states to lead the charge in disaster response. It's important to note that states largely already do. The FEMA's efforts are typically to support the states' efforts and then reimburse them for those costs. Terry.
Right. So Trump also appeared to add a new condition on additional aid for the wildfires, demanding that lawmakers establish voter ID laws and open up water taps. Now, this is something that most presidents don't do. They don't say, OK, we'll give you disaster aid if you do these things on these other issues. It's generally been, let's help. Not with Trump. So how are Californians responding?
Not surprisingly, they're not responding very favorably to Trump's proposal. They're taking it as a threat. And California Governor Gavin Newsom, of course, a Democrat, says that it's wrong to put conditions on federal aid. I want to focus a little bit on the state's water supply, though, because it's a little bit of context, right? California is somewhat unique in that most of the water comes from Northern California. So cities in the south, like Los Angeles, have to draw in from other sources. Trump has falsely claimed that the hydrants ran dry in the Pacific Palisades. We remember that happening, right? Because he says, which is false, that water conservation efforts in California had diverted water elsewhere into the ocean. And the California, the hydrants specifically in the Pacific Palisades, they ran dry because they were overstressed. There was, you'll remember, this extreme wind that prevented the firefight from happening in the air. And so all of the sources to pull from where those hydrants themselves, and that overwhelmed the system. But it is worth noting that that was a problem, and it's something that's under investigation whether the city handled that appropriately, Terry.
Right, absolutely. So you always get something different with Donald Trump. Buckle up, Christian Cordero. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Developing news, President Trump is ordering the release of thousands of classified documents tied to the 1963 assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The move also includes records on the 1968 assassinations of Robert F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. Trump signed the executive order fulfilling a campaign promise saying that, quote, everything will be revealed. The order directs officials to create a plan for releasing the JFK files within 15 days. Trump's order argues that keeping these files hidden is no longer in the public's interest. Now, we spoke to journalist Jefferson Morley, editor of JFK Facts on Substack, who says so far it's only a plan.
The details of the president's plan are very important because we've seen these federal agencies, the CIA and the FBI in particular, able to resist public demands for full disclosure for 60 years. Their demands for secrecy are likely to continue. So the key is the details of the president's plan. Is he serious about full JFK disclosure? We hope so.
Researchers say thousands of records remain classified, many tied to the CIA. Trump handed the pen to sign the order to his HHS nominee, that's Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who has been critical of the government account of his uncle and father's assassinations.
So reaction to this is very big.
Yeah, so RFK came out and said this is a great move in the name of transparency, but JFK's grandson issued a statement tonight saying that Trump is using his grandfather as a political political prop, saying that there's, quote, nothing heroic about it.
Manitoba RCMP say 6 people from multiple countries have been arrested after trying to illegally cross into Canada from the U.S. The arrests come amid heightened attention on border security. The group was spotted on January 14th, crossing the border on foot near Emerson. Some were not dressed for the freezing temperatures, and an ambulance was called to ensure their safety. The 6 were taken into custody and transferred to the Canada Border Services Agency.
Действительно, нам лучше встретиться, опираясь на реалии сегодняшнего дня, поговорить спокойно по всем тем направлениям, которые представляют интерес как для США, так и для России. Мы готовы. Но, повторяю, это прежде всего, конечно, зависит от решений и выбора действующей американской администрации. Например, подтачивание могущества самого доллара. С нынешним президентом США у меня всегда были деловые, исключительно деловые, но в то же время прагматические отношения и доверительные, я бы сказал. И я не могу не согласиться с ним в том, что если бы он был президентом, если бы у него в 2020 году не украли победу, то, может быть, и не было бы того кризиса на Украине, который возник в 2022 году. Могу только сказать, что мы видим заявление действующего президента вопроса, связанного, скажем, с переговорами. Мы слышим о возможности введения дополнительных санкций в отношении России. Я сомневаюсь, что он будет принимать такие решения, которые будут наносить вред самой американской экономике. Он человек не только умный, он прагматичный человек. Петербургского, тогда Ленинградского университета. Я могу вам сказать, что если...
This morning, President Trump threatening blanket tariffs on products not made in the U.S.
If you don't make your product in America, which is your prerogative, then very simply you will have to pay a tariff.
Trump speaking remotely to business leaders from around the world, gathering at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland.
My message to every business in the world is very simple. Come make your product in America, and we will give you among the lowest taxes of any nation on earth.
Trump is threatening tariffs on America's top trading partners, Mexico and Canada.
We're thinking in terms of 25% on Mexico and Canada because they're allowing vast numbers of people. Canada's a very bad abuser also. Vast numbers of people to come in and fentanyl to come in.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says if Trump imposes tariffs on Canada, 2 things will happen.
One, Canada will have a strong, robust response, because we don't want this, but we will respond if necessary. And 2, prices for American consumers on just about everything will go up.
The premier of oil-rich Alberta, Canada warning Americans in some states could pay $1 per gallon more for gas if Trump puts tariffs on Canadian oil. Trump also demanding the Federal Reserve drop interest rates immediately.
And likewise, they should be dropping all over the world.
One financial expert with a warning.
I think there's going to be a disconnect between what the president wants, which obviously is lower rates. He thinks that's going to grow the economy. And the flip side of that, if they lower rates too aggressively, inflation's going to come back really aggressively.
Trump cannot just demand interest rates to drop and it happens. It's up to the Federal Reserve to determine when to raise and lower rates. Perry Russell.
I'll also be signing an executive order to begin the process of fundamentally reforming and overhauling FEMA, or maybe getting rid of FEMA. I think, frankly, FEMA is not good. I think when you have a problem like this, I think you want to go and, whether it's a Democrat or Republican governor, you want to use your state to fix it and not waste time calling FEMA. And then FEMA gets here and they don't know the area. They've never been to the area, and they want to give you rules that you've never heard about. They want to bring people that aren't as good as the people you already have. And FEMA's turned out to be a disaster. FEMA has been a very big disappointment. They cost a tremendous amount of money. It's very bureaucratic, and it's very slow. Other than that, we're very happy with them. Okay, and I think when there's a problem with the state, I think that
Problems should be taken care of by the state. That's what we have states for.
I'm going to apologize for nothing. There's absolutely nothing I will apologize for, because I did nothing wrong, the Proud Boys did nothing wrong, and American patriots did nothing wrong. Asterisk, there might be some people in there that were violent, but the process was corrupt, so they do deserve a pardon.
All right, viewers. Now, Kiev confirms the return of 757 Ukrainian soldiers killed in battle, and this is one of the largest repatriations since Russia's invasion back in 2022. Now, the exchange underscores the relentless toll of a war that is approaching its fourth year, completion of the third year. Of these, 451 bodies were recovered from the Donetsk region, a focal point of intense fighting. Donetsk, Pokrovsk, a logistical hub, a mining and transport hub as well, has been devastated by Russian bombardments and remains a key Kremlin target. 34 bodies were repatriated from Russian morgues, including from areas affected by Ukraine's surprise offensive in the Kursk region last August. The grim exchange highlights the cost of the war as both sides refuse to disclose accurate death tolls. US President Donald Trump has made bold claims about the war in Ukraine, saying that approximately 1 million Russian soldiers and 700,000 Ukrainian troops have been killed since the full-scale invasion began. Now, this is the fifth major exchange between the warring countries, involving more than 500 bodies since October. While the repatriation remains one of the few cooperative efforts between Kiev and Moscow, a lack of transparency, especially on the part of Russia, deepens the tragedy. Both nations brace for a third year of the next year of the war. The human cost grows even heavier.
Goma, we are not safe. For real, we are not safe.
Et la ville de Goma, c'est une ville qui est maintenue en étau. La ville est asphyxiée. Il n'y a plus d'entrée, il n'y a plus de sortie. Vous savez, la population qui se trouve à Goma n'a qu'une issue, c'est le Rwanda. Si les dépôts de denrées alimentaires peuvent durer 24 heures, et après les 24 heures, ça sera le chaos.
Now, the majority of food that we are eating in Goma, it's coming from Rwanda and Uganda. And this war have the economic part. And there are people who are getting benefits economically. The fees is growing up. They are becoming very, very expensive because it's coming from other countries. They are not coming from Congo. If we leave Goma, who will be controlling Goma? We are children of Goma, we are sons of Goma, we will not leave Goma, because Goma is our motherland.
Franchement, je suis un patriote, je ne peux pas quitter Goma. Si les rebelles vont arriver, ils vont me retrouver à Goma.
Moving on. Now, the docking of 2 Russian military ships, a Syrian naval base, has raised the speculations of Moscow beginning to pull out its facility from the country after the fall of the Assad's regime. Now, according to media reports, 2 Russian ships, Sparta and Sparta II, were spotted docking at the Syrian coast of Tartus on Tuesday. While the United States has already sanctioned them, Ukraine has been claiming that the 2 vessels have been used for transportation of Russian weapons. The Russian ships were seen in Tartus after movements of large military hardware to the port were reported in recent weeks, claiming that several vehicles and equipment were captured in the satellite images arriving from Russian outposts, according to the country, in fact, across the country to the Syrian ports. And for years, Tartus has been a key base for Russia in the Mediterranean Sea. Earlier, Syrian media had reported that the new regime in Damascus has cancelled Russia's lease for the port, even though Moscow was reportedly keen on retaining control over the base and was trying to convince the new government to allow to stay in the country. Now, reports suggest that initially the Russian ships were not given permission to dock at Tartus, and while the discussions were on between the Kremlin and the Syrian authorities, the ships continued to stay off the coast for several weeks. Sparta and Sparta II vessels were reportedly owned by Oberonlo Gestica LLC, which is a shipping company that operates under the Russian Ministry of Defense. Let's head straight to the top story that we are tracking. A Chinese startup is developing a super-fast drone capable of reaching 4 times the speed of sound. Now, the drone bears the name of Kuan Tianhu, which means soaring stone monkey. It is named after one of the best-known figures in Chinese literature and mythology. Sun Wukong, also known as the Monkey King, the unmanned aerial vehicle is being developed by Sichuan Lingkong Tianjing Technology as part of a broader effort to develop a supersonic passenger jet. Now, the company has announced that it will make its first flight next year, as military hypersonic technology trickles down to the commercial sector. Now, Kuan Tianhu, which is powered by 2 detonation engines, it weighs 1.5 tons and measures 7 meters, which is around 23 feet in length. Let's now take a look at the flight parameters now. Now, the drone can reach a cruising speed of Mach 4.2 at an altitude of 20 kilometers. According to the chief engineer, the aircraft also had good fuel efficiency. He said that with 6 kilograms of fuel used during the test, the UAV covered a distance of 50 kilometers. Now, this is equivalent to the fuel consumption of an off-road vehicle, but with a speed of 60 times faster. Now, the supersonic technology has been a critical component of military hardware, and in recent years, it has trickled down to the commercial sector. Supersonic aircraft development has been delayed for decades due to challenges such as noise, economic feasibility, and a lack of mature technology. But with the advancements in noise suppression, material science, and flight control systems, companies around the world are now eyeing supersonic passenger flights. US startups such as Boom Supersonic and Hermeus are pursuing different technological approaches, with the latter planning to launch a Mach 5 hypersonic aircraft. Meanwhile, Swiss startup Genesis is exploring hydrogen-powered hypersonic jets. However, no breakthrough commercial product has emerged so far. Chinese startups, on the other hand, appear to be accelerating research and development in this sphere, though.
Iran's Revolutionary Guards conducted naval drills in the Gulf and strategic Strait of Hormuz as part of a series of nationwide military exercises. UK says that several vessels report radio challenges in northern Gulf, which they think is linked to the drills. More in this next report. Take a look.